Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Called. Now, whether you're joining us online or you're joining us at one of our physical locations, I am so glad that you're here. My name is Landon. I'm one of the leaders here, and I'm going to be bringing you our holy habit number 2. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, you're probably thinking, what is holy habit? Well, we are currently in a message series entitled Holy Habits. And we're just talking about things that can help us hunger more for God. Things that will help us want to learn more and grow toward a better and deeper relationship with God. And so week 1, we talked just about habits, how habits are important and habits are powerful. That if we want to live a full life, a life that is really fulfilled, then we need to stay hungry. We need to just stay hungry for God. Last week, Logan talked about our holy habit number 1, and that was the Bible. That we need to be serious about the Bible, that the Bible is more than a book. Someone say, oh yeah, it's more than a book. I mean, it's medicine, it's our weapon, and it could also just be food, things that we feed on and we grow with. The Bible is important, and we need to set a habit with the Bible. So tonight we're diving in and we're talking about holy habit number 2. And holy habit number 2 is prayer. Everyone say prayer. Prayer is so important. And I feel like before I even get in, I need to kind of share with you behind the scenes, what happens behind the scenes at Called, so you understand just how important prayer is to me, to our team, to your leaders, to this ministry. We have a saying here at Called that, and we say it like this, we say that everything starts and ends with prayer. That means that when we're planning these message series, we're praying. That means when we're doing, we're praying. That means when we're cleaning up and after everything is done, we are praying. Prayer isn't just a one-time event. It's something that we do consistently. Everything starts and ends with prayer. That's what we say here. And just like how we're saying that everything starts and ends with prayer, it really shows that prayer isn't just a last resort. You know, a lot of people, they live their lives and they only turn to prayer when things get hard. Prayer isn't just the last resort. Sure, it can be, but prayer is also a first response. Everything starts and ends with prayer. It's a first response and it's a last resort. And that is why the holy habit of prayer is the perfect habit to break any bad habits in your life. Now, if we're all honest, we all have a few habits that we don't like. Okay, and I mean, if we're really honest, you know, some of us may not be aware of it. Some of us are probably thinking about it right now, but many of us we probably know right away that there's something in our life, that we don't like about ourselves. Now, this is not a self-esteem thing. This is a habit issue. That there's something that we're continually doing that we want to stop, but we somehow seem like we can't. Maybe that's a habit of gossip, or maybe it's a habit of suicidal thoughts, or drug use, or a habit of lust. Maybe it's a habit of bad language, or a habit of doubt. I mean, there's all these habits that we can be going through in our mind, and I'm sure you have a habit, because I have my habits that I don't like and I would love to change. And I want to encourage you tonight that tonight, our holy habit of prayer may be the one habit that can change your bad habit. Well, you're probably thinking, well, how, Landon? When we look at a habit, there's always 3 parts of any habit. The first part is a trigger. If you really think about it, there is something that triggers you to go into that habit. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's your parents fighting. Maybe it's a relationship. But there is a trigger that leads you to part 2 of habits, which is your response. And in the response is where we just do our habit. We're responding to the trigger with our bad habit. And the third part of a habit is repeat. It just repeats as a cycle. That's how habits are formed. It's a cycle. There's a trigger. There's our response, and there's repeating it. Now, many people think that in order to change or break a habit that we need to deal with the trigger. But someone say that's wrong. Now, I know that was a little rough. maybe that's how you can deal with some habits, but I'm going to tell you there's a better way. Dealing with the trigger isn't necessarily going to deal with your habit. It's gonna help you resist that habit, but once that trigger comes back, the habit most likely will come back. See, the trigger oftentimes we don't have control of. There's always going to be stress. There's always going to be fights. There's always going to be relationship problems. There's always going to be something that we can't control, which will most likely be our trigger. So dealing with the trigger is not how we deal with breaking or changing habits. How do we do that? Well, we need to deal with our response. The trigger is going to be there, but we need to change how we react. And that's where prayer comes in. Because prayer can be our first response. Prayer should be our first response. Now, that's not a note-taking thing that's on the screen, but I encourage you guys, if you're taking notes, write that down. That prayer should be our first response. And I want to give you 2 reasons why prayer is the perfect habit to be the first response to help break any bad habit. Here's point number 1. Prayer brings perspective. Prayer brings perspective. Now, before I really get into this point, I want to show you a quick video. And this video shows what it's like when we're too close to the situation. Now, I'm not going to say much about the video, but I do want to say this. I want you to turn to someone and I want you to tell them these words. Tell them, power through. Power through, because it is an older video. So I just want you to power through this video, watch it to the end, and trust me, I believe at the end of this video, you're really going to enjoy what you learned from it. Check this out.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
And action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Man, I mean, that was a pretty awesome video. I think me being in that film industry behind the scenes, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, that takes a lot of planning and choreography to get all of that, but I can also see how you and I missed a lot of the changes. Why? It's because the camera was zoomed in to a certain part of the scene. It was controlling our focus. It was really controlling our perspective. And when you and I are too close to a situation that we're going through, we often don't have the best perspective. And there's only one way we can get a good and better perspective, and that's through prayer. And when we pray, we're asking God, let us see what you see in this situation. And it's like God will take us from that close zoomed in lens and put us behind the scenes so that we can see a bigger picture. Now, it's not always going to come right away, but I do believe that through prayer and through the habit, it's not just one prayer, it's a habit of prayer, a holy habit of prayer, that God will allow us to have a better perspective. Prayer brings perspective. In fact, I just want to check right now how you're getting this and if you're receiving this perspective. I'm going to put a picture on the screen right now with all these different objects, and I want you to try to just memorize as many things as you can, because I'm going to ask you to close your eyes in a little bit, and I'm going to ask you one question about one object that was on the screen. Ready? Keep looking, keep looking. 3, 2, 1. Close your eyes, close your eyes, close it tight. Someone yell out, what was the color of my sweater? The color of my sweater that I was wearing. All right, it sounds like most of you got it, and that's good because you were observing all this time at me speaking. If you didn't get it, you can see how there's going to be some changes that we need to make because we're sometimes so focused on the situation that we miss the bigger picture. Prayer brings perspective, but this holy habit of prayer doesn't just change our bad habits only through perspective. It also changes because it brings presence and peace. Prayer brings presence and peace. I'm not saying like Christmas presents. I'm saying the presence of God. Prayer brings God's presence and it brings us this inner peace. In fact, don't take my word for it. Look what it says in Psalms chapter 46, verse 10 to 11. This is what it says. It says, be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. In this verse, what it's saying is, it's saying, be still and know that I am God. And in verse 11, it says that God is among us. God is with us. In fact, if we look through chapter 46 of Psalms, this chapter, it says that God is with us 4 times, that his presence is with us. It says it in verse 1, it says it again in verse 5, then in verse 7, and then what we just read in verse 11. It's telling us that God's presence is with us when we just slow down and be still and meditate and pray. That through that prayer, God's presence will be given. And when we are surrounded by the presence of God, peace automatically comes. It's a peace that surpasses all understanding. It's a peace that feels numbing. That we know that we should be angry, we should be hurt, we should be disgusted, we should be jealous, we should be all these feelings, but we don't feel any of that. We just feel this sense of peace. Prayer brings us his presence and this peace. Now I want to give you a challenge. I want to give you a real action step, a real practical one that we can do this week. And based on this scripture in Psalms 46, it says, be still and know. And I want to challenge you this week, and if you can write this down, I want you to be intentional and put like alarm clocks either on your phone for every single day for the next week to do something that I want to call prayer pauses. I mean, you can just put it in your phone in the alarm and you can just label it prayer pause. And it can ring every day at 12 o'clock or every day at 3 o'clock, and set your time. And what I want you to do is when that alarm rings, you stop, you pause, you be still, you know that God is God, and you start to pray. And I encourage you to start every prayer this week like this. God, I know that you're with me. Some of my strongest prayers and strongest times with God is starting that way. God, I know that you are here. God, I know that you're with me. God, I know that your presence and peace is available. Be still and know. Prayer brings perspective. Prayer brings presence and peace. See, this pause, this being still, is powerful. And if you don't believe it, you can think, well, Landon, that's a lot of work. It's going to take a while, and it's true. Habits take a long time to put in place. It's a slow process. Someone say slow. It's a slow process. It's going to take you being still a lot. But I want to prove to you how powerful your pause can be, how powerful being still can be, how powerful a consistent habit can be, that it can create a great change. And I'm going to show you this just by one simple question. What color was my sweater again? Probably didn't notice it, but it slowly started changing colors. And that slow process, that when you saw it and when you knew the color till now, that slow process represents what a habit can do. A habit, although it's slow, is consistent and over time can make a big difference. If you will, bow your head with me and close your eyes as one of your called leaders leads us in a prayer.